Hey everybody, Cami Westall here with your lecture on the Renaissance. You guys might like this since you won't have to see my ugly face, but we'll still get the information. So this is information that will potentially show up on the final exam or as we look towards that, which will be your last test. So this will be the first segment of that. That you should review at some point before we get back from spring break, but you can certainly review it more before the final. But anyway, we're getting into this fun area known as the Renaissance. We'll look a little more in depth at these four characteristics or dimensions and some examples of those, and also talk about the rise in art, which is one facet of the Renaissance. There's lots of other stuff going on, but that's a popular and well-known area. So to go ahead and give ourselves a definition so we know what we're talking about, the Renaissance literally means the rebirth. So the rebirth of the lost styles and values of antiquity happens from around 1350 to 1525 in Italy. When we're talking about antiquity, that's referring back to ancient Rome, ancient Greece, stuff that I know you remember very well. I'm sure you haven't forgotten a single thing in that time since we talked about that. But this is before Christianity, before Islam. You're trying to go back and imitate what those people did and what they accomplished. We've been in the Middle Ages, which becomes known as the Dark Ages at this time, and people say, okay, it's dark. There wasn't a lot of stuff that we're proud of that was accomplished, and so the Renaissance is going to change that as people are intentional about returning to these old values, about achieving great things. And there are these kind of four major characteristics or dimensions of the Renaissance. I'll just go quickly since you can pause these to write them down. First is the idea that secular values are going to gain importance. This does not mean that everybody... Secular, if you don't know, means non-religious. So no, put religion aside, common values that would apply to everybody. These secular, non-Christian values are going to gain importance. That does not mean everybody goes atheist. People are still very devoted in Italy to the Catholic Church, that universal church. But there are other things, such as money. Money not viewed as a pious thing to think about. But people are saying, well, maybe there can be value in that. Good things can be done if you have money. So the idea of money, of making a name for yourself, those types of values are becoming more important and more common. There's a rise of individualism. We haven't been talking about a lot of individual human beings over the past couple of weeks. You've got, some exceptional leaders like Charlemagne and Philip IV and his issue with Boniface, and but these are kings and rulers and queens and popes. Now we're going to be back to a situation where we know more about people who aren't in those upper echelons of society, but that the individual has importance. There's a new view of mankind. The Renaissance was putting a positive spin on what people are capable of achieving, what they're capable of creating. Man, instead of being viewed as this sinful, ugly, hairy thing, is going to be viewed as capable of achieving greatness. And then, fourthly, the monopoly of the church, the dominance of the church, will be challenged. If the church doesn't go away, obviously, as we've talked about the rise or seeing Pope Francis elected, it's still very much important, but its dominance over life will be challenged during the Renaissance. So one of the big inventions, just to kind of fit it in here, that's going to be really important for spreading these ideas, and one of the reasons why the ideas of the Renaissance will be able to spread is thanks to the printing press, invented about halfway through the Renaissance, and it's able to spread these ideals that early writers and thinkers would do. It is invented by Johann Gutenberg. The technology was stolen from him for a little while, but now he gets his historical credit, somewhere around 1439. And what the printing press enables you to do is have movable type. So you've got these letters and these words, and if you notice, they look backwards, but they're kind of 3D. You put these in a the series of words that you want to have on paper. You slab it with ink. You print it. This is very tedious if you're only going to print a couple of things. I mean, it's going to take a long time to get all these little words and letters in the right place. The difference is that once you get it on there, you can make unlimited copies pretty darn easily. Whereas with something like writing a book, or that a scribe would copy an ancient text, it could take years to do one version of something like a Bible. But now, if you were able to do that with the printing press, you could produce endless amounts. That means with supply and demand, it becomes more affordable. That means literature will be more popular because there's more that's available. That means people can find out more easily what's happening in other places, so the world will become a little bit smaller. In a way, literacy rates increase, so all kinds of changes and ideas can be shared more readily through this very, very important invention. So this will be a key in the Renaissance. There's several Gutenberg Bibles. The Bible was the first full book Gutenberg published. And if you've there's one up at the Library of Congress in Washington, D.C. If you've ever gotten to see them, they're absolutely beautiful. Just the ink and the colors and the page quality of the paper. So Gutenberg's Bible's well known here, and a big change from being hand copied by scribes and monks. Another big concept in the Renaissance that kind of ties into everything is this sense of humanism. And it's this emphasis on cultural learning and refinement. Again, goes back to the values, the secular values, goes back to looking at what the Greeks and Romans did in their cultures. And it also ties into those four dimensions and seeing, again, the new view of mankind and what individuals can do. This is a famous scene from the ceiling of the Sistine Chapel, painted by Michelangelo, and we'll talk about later, but this is the room where the cardinals met to elect Pope Francis. And this idea of God touching Adam, giving the first man these gifts of the divine, realizing the special connection between the holy Lord in heaven and these creatures here on earth. And so this idea that because they're created by God, they're gifted and able to do great things. And that's, again, a very different view from what has been taught and what we've seen individuals think about society and how they were treated. Humanism goes a step further into this idea of civic humanism. So some people who say, okay, we're going to take all this refinement, we're going to take the concept that we can learn about the culture and the world around us, we're going to take the idea that we can do great things, and we're going to accomplish those great things and be active for our state, our land, whatever country's kind of a little bit of a vague term, but whatever their government system is, they're going to serve actively. And so we're going to have a lot of people involved in politics, a lot of people who will take pride in the type of government that they have, whether it be a republic or a kingdom or something in between. but living actively. And so there are going to be a lot of people who say, I'm going to use my gifts, my skills, to serve my land and my people. And you get this example here in Italy. Again, a lot of people don't realize it, but the country of Italy is younger than the United States by close to 100 years. Same thing for Germany. The land that we know as Italy was divided into all sorts of different states. So all of these up in Milan and Venice and Florence is going to be a really key area. The papal states here, controlled by the Pope, the Kingdom of Naples, that lots of people fight over. You've got all of these different states and types of government. And because these are small areas, certain families will be well known and have a lot of influence and power in these places. So there's lots of politicking going on during this time as well. Literature becomes a huge area that people will celebrate, largely thanks to the printing press. And again, this idea that now people can read things more feasibly because they cost less money, because they're more available. And people respond to the famous literature of ancient Greece and of the Romans, and will start to produce more and more material. One of the most famous examples is this guy named Petrarch. Here's a famous quotation from Petrarch, that it is better to will the good than to know the truth. A true Renaissance idea that it's better to be active, to try to use your talents for humans to achieve good things. It's better to want that than it is to gain a bunch of head knowledge. So he says it's better to want what's good for others. And so that new way of thinking, instead of just getting knowledge for the sake of knowledge and knowing facts in your head. And Petrarch is a poet. He, in the mid-1300s, is crowned as the poet laureate on the... where am I going to write that? I'll write it here. Well, I didn't plan that out too well. Kind of the state poet, and that will be the first time since the ancient Roman days that someone on the steps of the famous Roman Senate will be crowned poet laureate. He's bringing back these traditions of the ancient world, because again, you're trying to rebirth these concepts. Petrarch is the one who really gets the concept of the Dark Ages going, because he talks about how the time period that they were coming out of was an age of shadows, and that age of shadows became the Dark Ages. There wasn't much good that was done, and the people in the Renaissance, they were very cognizant of that, and they wanted to take matters into their own hands and start this new era. And that's unusual in history, where people are willing to take the initiative and be able to name their own era. But that's what happens with the Renaissance, and Petrarch has a lot to do with that, and referring to the Dark Ages as the Age of Shadows, getting that terminology of the Dark Ages in people's heads. Another powerful group of people would be the Medici family. These are bankers. We've got Cosmo, his son Lorenzo over there, the patriarch Piero. Bankers in the city of Florence. We talked about how there originally weren't a lot of Catholics in banking, and Jews got started in that business because of usury. Usury is loaning money at interest, and that was viewed as a sin in the Catholic Church. but the Catholic Church has changed some rules, and now the Medici family will come to great prominence and be known for tremendous amounts of wealth. And we've already talked about how money has replaced land as the primary source of wealth. And they're able to use their money and their influence for more civic projects, to boost their own reputation, and also to pay others who will then become gifted and well-trained artists. One of the major projects that they have a big part in will be in their hometown of Florence, with the famous basilica here, this huge church made out of white marble. And there was a problem when it was built, because nobody could build a dome. No one knew how to build a dome that was big enough to cover the whole basilica. So imagine the skyline here then without this enormous dome. Well, this is one of these feel-good stories that I like, because it shows if you're not good at one thing, there's something else that's meant for you. This basilica was majorly important because, again, it's the Catholic Church, meaning universal. You've got the 7 sacraments. Everybody in the town is going to go. One of the areas is the baptistry. Everyone has to be baptized, so everybody's going to go in there. Their families see you go in there, an important area. Florence has a competition for the doors of this particular area of the church or basilica known as the baptistry. And this competition for these doors, they become known as the gates of paradise. You see these scenes here. These are biblical scenes that will be engraved as a bas-relief. Let's see. Need another text box. So these bas-reliefs are the type of artwork here where it's not an independent sculpture, but it's not a flat drawing. It kind of sticks out there. That's my nice artistic definition of it. But the guy who wins the bas-relief is, well, should have just left it memorized, a guy named Ghiberti. So Ghiberti wins. Several people compete for this, but Ghiberti wins the competition. Here's an up-close of one of the scenes. If you ever get to go to Florence, don't do what I did, which was, well, of course now we have digital cameras, but back in the day when there were film cameras, and I took like a whole roll of film on the Gates of Paradise, and they're not the original ones. The original ones are now inside a museum in Florence, but you can see the detail of these here. And in the Gates of Paradise, you had Ghiberti, who wins. There's another guy named Brunelleschi. Don't worry, I'll show his name on the next slide. Brunelleschi is bummed because he's lost this competition, so he's all depressed. This was a major... hang on. Did I cancel out of my... Oh, no. Oh, there it is. Okay. Woo! Me again. Alright, I thought my little... Okay. Thought I was just talking away to my dog here at my house while I'm doing this. Brunelleschi lost this competition. And Brunelleschi's bummed because this was, a big commission. He would have been famous. So he goes to Rome, and in Rome he studies architecture. And one of the things that he studies is the Pantheon, which we talked about back when we did our unit on ancient Rome. The Pantheon was the largest dome in Europe at that time. And that gives him the ability, again, from studying the works and the accomplishments of ancient Romans, Brunelleschi is able to go back to Florence and say, I know how to build your dome. And that he did. So he is, the Medici family helps pay him. Brunelleschi gets the credit for this magnificent dome at the Basilica in Florence. So you can see little people up here as an idea of how huge this thing is. Basically, he built an inner dome as well and an outer dome, so there's more support. But these great accomplishments that were done from studying the works from like 1400 years earlier. So huge accomplishments there as well. Here's another building designed by Brunelleschi in honor of the Medici family, Lorenzo de Medici, known as San Lorenzo, a church. And again, you can see these ideas. I mean, it's very beautiful inside, but you can see, if you look, at the ideas of the Greeks and the Romans, these open spaces, these Roman arches, the tall Corinthian columns like we had at the Parthenon. So largely influenced once again by Greeks and Romans, the marble that's used. Painting will change as well. There are a couple of people who help lead others to make major improvements. One of those is Giotto. And Giotto is largely known for, instead of painting people with plain expressions, for adding an emotional element, this human response. And so here at the crucifixion of Jesus, instead of everybody just stoically standing around, you see shock, you see weeping angels who are upset over this. And so that idea of human expression that Giotto uses to make painting more realistic and more emotionally captivating, and that will inspire a lot of others. And then there's a painter named Masaccio, and Masaccio is the one who will figure out the mathematic perspective necessary to make a painting look three-dimensional, put it in its proper perspective. And so here, this is a flat, this is a fresco. Again, I didn't think about doing this just for internet. I'm used to being able to write on the board. A fresco is a wall painting, and in Masaccio, you see here that he's, if you look at it, you get the perspective that these two people, who actually helped pay for the artwork, and were not alive to witness Jesus being crucified, they're on one side. You've got this hallway with John and Mary in blue. Always in blue is Mary, the Virgin Mother of Jesus, always depicted in blue in these religious artworks. Jesus being crucified in a hallway. This idea of God the Father and this dove behind him. So this new perspective, and that will lead to a lot of changes in the art world as well. So, brief intro there, and I will see you back in class to pick up with this stuff on April the 9th, I think. Have a great spring break.